Hello everybody, Ben Woodruff here with another falconer video. Today's video I want to be talking about kind of an understanding of the mentality of accipiters to kind of give you some idea on how to better train them and work with these amazing animals. Before I jump in, if you haven't already, if you could please hit subscribe, I very much appreciate it because it does help me keep this channel up and going. Now, accipiters, just really quick if you're kind of new to this sport. There's all kinds of birds of prey species, raptor species that are used in falconry, but there's kind of main groups. There's the falcons, where falconry get its name from. There are the eagles, typically the aquila eagles, like golden eagles, large, powerful predators. There are the buteos, or the buzzards, or soaring hawks. They're not true hawks. And again, in Europe, these are more accurately called buzzards. But like the red-tailed hawk would be the probably kind of the most iconic buteo to mention here in the States. And then last are the accipiters. Now, accipiters are the true hawks. They're often also called the short-winged hawks or the forest hawks. They all have a very long tail and short, rounded wings, and compared to other raptors. And that is because being mostly forest dwellers, shorter wings, you flapping faster, you can dodge branches without breaking them. Shorter wings, longer tail, more maneuverability. So in the United States, we have three of these. We have the very famous northern goshawk. The northern goshawk is an interesting species because northern goshawks also are circumpolar, so we find them in the northern hemisphere. So technically the same species we find out throughout northern Europe and northern Asia, though the subspecies are different. It's still technically the same species, the northern goshawk. Then in the middle size, we have the Cooper's hawk, which is too big to be a little hawk and too little to be a big hawk. And these are, in my opinion, the most intense accipiter we have. I believe it was famous author Mike McDermott who coined the phrase feathered rattlesnakes to describe them, and I think that's quite accurate. And then the smallest we have is the sharp-shinned hawk, which I have mentioned before. I really think the common name should be switched to American sparrowhawk, because it genetically it branched off from the Eurasian sparrowhawk family line, and it's a true sparrowhawk. So anyways, there are hundreds of accipiters all over the world, all different kinds that are utilized in the Middle East and in India in particular. One of the most famous is the shikra. And that's something that I know a lot of viewers of this channel have mentioned that they fly and love. I've never had the chance to fly one, but wish I could. But why am I bringing this up? Is because accipiters are very intense. And if you get into falconry, especially here in the States, in the United States, we kind of have a cut and dry version where you start as an apprentice and your general class, your master class, and you're probably starting with something that is comparatively easy. Now, sure, you have to go through all this work of passing a test and getting equipment inspected, finding a sponsor. There's all these hoops you have to jump through, and it may seem difficult to have finally gotten your red-tailed hawk and trained it, but compared to an accipiter, that's nothing. It's a big jump. And my view is a little bit different. There is a rich heritage of falconry all over the world, and a lot of times we as falconers will say, you do this, this, and this, and you're going to get this result. This video is not about that. This is not me trying to declare the right or wrong way to train an accipiter. This is me trying to just kind of give you a perspective to view through so that you yourself can innovate in your training and troubleshoot in your training. Sometimes understanding the mentality makes all the difference in the world. The reason I bring this up is there's a facet of my life that I don't talk about much because I'm very protective of it, and that is I have the opportunity to work with people with neurodiversity, individuals with autism, Asperger's, ADHD, which I myself have. It probably shows. Even schizophrenia and seizures. And as such, part of what I do is to try to understand how a person thinks. Now, I'm a biologist, so we have this huge range of behavior. A biologist tries to see what's common, what's the normal range, and we kind of draw a half circle, and we say that half circle, this is normal for the species, and on the edge you have this behavior and this behavior, this appearance, this appearance. For example, red-tailed hawks. It can be said most red-tailed hawks have a red tail as an adult. But over here, the Harlan subspecies really kind of doesn't, and the Kreider's subspecies really kind of doesn't, but most do. So you can still say red-tailed hawks have a red tail, with a few exceptions, as an adult. And that's what we do with neurodiversity. Neurodiversity is to say, okay, most humans have a mind that works in certain predictable ways, measurable ways, documentable ways. And then there might be smaller amounts of the population that function in a different way. And it's easy to be dismissive and say, oh, a person's mind doesn't work right. Well, what do you mean by right? Well, it's not within the bulk of this curve that we draw. Well, that doesn't mean it's the wrong way. It's a different way. Now, for some individuals, it can impact their ability to function in a world that was designed for people whose minds do fit within this curve. That doesn't mean their way of thinking is necessarily wrong or incorrect, but it can be very different. And so again, I try to understand how people think, how their neural processing works. And as a professional wildlife trainer, that's what I also do with animals. I want to understand, what are you afraid of? What are you motivated by? How do you think? Why do you think? What do you think? And so for me, it's been very clear with accipiters that their brain is wired entirely differently than other birds. And here's how I view it. Okay, so here's my observation. Take it for what it's worth. And I'm going to use a term here, and the term is frame rate. Now, when we talk about frame rate, normally we're talking about, like the term comes from especially the old days of film, right? Where you have a picture, then you have another picture, you have another picture, and when those all go through, it's a movie. Now, the more frames per second that go through the camera, the finer the image is. So do you have 10 frames a second, 50 frames a second, 1,000 frames a second? When we do slow motion, if you slow that down and play it back, the fewer frames, it seems choppy. And the more frames you filmed, the smoother that slow motion goes. Okay, so that's the accurate term for the term frame rate. I'm going to use it in two ways that are commonly used. And the first one is visually. Obviously, there's not a set frame that is going through, but when you are the human mind, the frame rate that we perceive, meaning how much visual information we pick up, is so limited. That's why if you wave your hand really fast in front of your face, it's a blur. Try it. Or it's probably doing it on the video. See those? If it seems like a blur, that is a combination of the frame rate of this camera as well as your eyes and your brain translating what you're seeing. It's a blur. No, it's not a blur. If I did this to a Cooper's hawk, it would not see a blur. Okay, it would see it at that same speed, but there would be no blur whatsoever. It would be crisp and clear, even though it's waving at that speed. So, first of all, and semi-accurately use of the term, accipiters do have a higher frame rate, meaning their eyes can pick up photo information, and their brain can translate accurately and render that photo information at a much higher frame rate than we have. This is true of all raptors, but with accipiters, it's through the chart. Okay, it's way much more. But also, so that's talking visual, but also literal neural processing. I've tried to think, and what I usually tell my apprentices, this is the best I can do to kind of give a visual. If you see that show Zootopia, where all the animals live in this town, and all the animals are like sentient humans, and the people running the DMV are all sloths, like tree sloths. And the rabbit's going in to talk to the sloth, and the fox is talking to the sloth, and it's all, and they tell him a joke, and all of a sudden he hears the joke, and all of a sudden his eyebrows go, oh, and he gets the joke, and he's like, and he's laughing really slow. That is how we are to accipiters. We're the sloth. Okay, our neural processing, our reaction time, and again, remember, all raptors have a much higher reaction time, they have a higher visual frame rate that they perceive, and they have a higher neural processing rate. It's true of most hunters. Most predators do as well. I mean, that's true. You look at how fast a cat can pounce on things. You've probably done that if you have a cat at home and you're playing with cat toys and you're like, am I fast enough with this cat toy that, I can see it's about ready to pounce. Can I move it away before it pounces? And usually you can't. So I know that's true. I don't have a percentage because I'm not putting scanners on the brain of a goshawk or something. But by observation, it is very clear, and it's very clear to any falconer who's practiced long enough, that accipiters, the neural processing happens much, much faster than even any other falcon, any other hawk, any other eagle, any other owl. Infinitely faster. And so they are perceiving the world in a very different way. And you have to understand that. I'm not going to give you specific training techniques in this video on what to do with that information. I want to arm you with it so that you're aware and that you can view an accipiter's reactions, when they're being aggressive, when they're responding right, when they're responding wrong, that you can view it through that lens and understand that any action they do that you react to them, you are reacting too slowly. If they show a threat response and you're like, oh, okay, they're feeling overly aggressive on this kill, I need to step back. They're mantling. In their perception, you took too long to respond. You just took far too long. It's almost like you're ignoring it, and that can elevate. All of a sudden, their aggression goes up and more. And it's like, hey, I just look and step back. Why is that too long? You can't fix that you are a sloth to them, but knowing it can help how you approach, how you interact with them. Accipiters, there is no bird that can catch more game than an accipiter. They will hunt and hunt and hunt all day. They are incredibly fast. They are incredibly maneuverable and tenacious, and they never stop. They're like, okay, we got something, let's go again. We got something, let's go again. Where a red tail might not. A red tail might be like, hey, I had a good hunt, caught a rabbit, cropped up, okay, you're right, let's call it a day. But accipiters, very different. And it's important to understand that it's very easy to be sucked into wanting to fly an accipiter because of their amazing hunting prowess. However, it is equally easy to get very frustrated with them and be impatient, which you should not do. Falconry requires intense patience, and that is why I always say with an accipiter, troubleshoot. Think through, why are they doing this? What is causing this? If there's a negative thing, troubleshoot through it. And also, connect yourself with other falconers who have or are still flying accipiters so that they can help bounce ideas off with you and troubleshoot. But again, when you do this, view it through the lens that their visual frame rate and their mental frame rate are much faster than not only ours, but any other raptor. And you are going to have more success feeding your thoughts through that window of understanding. It will help you immensely. So, again, just a little tidbit. Maybe that's a bit long-winded to make that point, but these videos are fun to make, and I hope they're helpful. And let me know if you have any questions down below. Let me know your observations. If you have more scientific background in this and actually know what the frame rate of accipiters is visually, I'd love somebody to post that and down below. And but as always, happy hawking.